This mobile learning activity is titled Honouring Our Environment, using mobiles to capture special places and their histories. The aim of the activity is to identify challenges to the environment. The roles of students is to act as journalists, historians, and researchers. The context is lower secondary education or high school education, students aged 12 to 16 years old, and the subjects or disciplines would be environmental science and history. The outcomes of the activity include the following. Students will understand a particular place through the eyes of a senior citizen, for example, a grandparent. They'll collaborate with that person to collect images, stories, and perspectives of that place as it was 50 years ago. Students will research the place as it is now and collect artifacts that describe it now. They'll prepare a digital narrative of that place, describing then and now, explaining the factors that have led to changes in that place or the preservation of the place. Students will finally share the narrative with the class and lead class discussions and celebrate the narrative with the community. To elaborate, these are the steps for the mobile learning activity. Students will be placed in groups of 2 or 3 to act as a journalist team. Step 2, they'll choose to interview people who are senior citizens in their community, for example, one of their grandparents, and they'll ask that person about a healthy, beautiful place or environment from their younger years or their youth. A note will be sent to the senior citizen or, for example, their grandparents, requesting their participation. Student journalist teams will then prepare a set of questions for interviewing that senior citizen to probe a description of a beautiful, unspoilt area from their childhood. The journalist teams, the student teams, will then interview the senior citizen. They'll then collect artifacts from the interviewee and elsewhere, and they'll research the history and current aspects of this place or environment. Students will then prepare a historical digital narrative using edited highlights from their interview with the senior citizen, adding music, text, and other multimedia artifacts to essentially create a description of the place then and now, ending in a final message about the environment. They'll then check a draft of their narrative with the senior citizen, the person they've interviewed, and get feedback from them, subsequently modifying the narrative based on that feedback and producing a final cut. They'll then screen the narrative in their class and initiate conversations about key issues raised about the place and its characteristics. For example, issues regarding climate change and pollution. And they'll get further peer feedback for any final amendments to the narrative. Finally, they'll celebrate their narrative at a community film festival or perhaps on a blog post on a community blog. So in terms of principles of innovative mobile learning, this task emphasises student autonomy and student agency. For example, students decide how to do the task. It emphasises artifact construction, the digital narrative, role play, with students role-playing as journalists, real-world tools. For example, they'll use apps that real journalists and historians might use. Peer review, stimulating discussion and conversation about environmental issues. Intergenerational learning with grandparents and other senior citizens. And bridging across formal and informal contexts. And finally, it's a community-based activity. For example, the narratives will be published on a community blog or showcased at a community film festival. These are some resources that might be helpful for this activity.